Alex Epstein's book, Fossil Future: Why Global Human Flourishing Requires More Oil, Coal, and Natural Gas, Not Less, tackles a topic shrouded in controversy, fear, and misinformation for decades: fossil fuels. It presents a perspective that challenges the mainstream narrative and argues that fossil fuels are a fundamental driver of human flourishing. In 2014, Epstein predicated that fossil fuel use would grow instead of shrink, and the benefits of this growth to human flourishing would far outweigh any negative side effects, including supposed climate impacts. While this would be deemed a pretty radical claim back then, Epstein didn't just make this up out of thin air, and he based it on three conclusions. First, fossil fuels have a unique ability to provide low-cost, reliable energy. For the billions of people who still have little to no access to energy, fossil fuels stand out as the most cost-effective and reliable source. Second, low-cost, reliable energy has massive, underappreciated benefits. It empowers us to use machines to improve our lives in countless ways. Lastly, rising carbon dioxide levels are manageable, with Epstein arguing that this impact is not catastrophic. Instead, he believes that ingenious human beings, empowered by fossil-fueled machines, can master the challenges posed by climate change. Today, we're constantly bombarded with stories about how renewables like solar and wind are rapidly replacing fossil fuels due to superior economics. On the flip side, we're also inundated with stories about the catastrophic impacts of fossil-fueled climate change. Climate-related disasters like storms, floods, and wildfires are portrayed as reaching unprecedented levels of danger. In short, the prevailing narrative is that fossil fuels are making the world a worse place to live, while renewables are here to save the day, and could do even more if we just ditch fossil fuels already. But here's the thing. Epstein argues that to truly understand the impact of fossil fuels, we need to look at the big picture facts, not just anecdotes or narratives. And when we do, he claims, his predictions have been completely vindicated. Let's break down some of these big picture facts. First, fossil fuels are still dominant. Despite the hype around renewables, fossil fuels still provide 4 times more energy than all alternatives combined. Solar and wind, while growing, only account for 3% of the world's energy. And that 3% relies heavily on mandates, subsidies, and backup from reliable fossil fuel power plants. Second, the world is becoming a better place to live. Low-cost, reliable energy from fossil fuels is a key driver of this improvement. It has powered increased industrialization, which has brought down the rate of extreme poverty from 42% in 1980 to less than 10% today. Lastly, climate-related disaster deaths are at an all-time low. While fossil fuels have contributed to warming the global climate system by about 1 degree Celsius over the last 170 years, climate-related disaster deaths have fallen by 98% over the last century. This is largely due to fossil-fueled climate mastery, from irrigation systems to heating and cooling systems to sturdy buildings and early warning systems. Epstein argues that the current push for net zero emissions is based on a flawed understanding of the role of fossil fuels. He believes that the drastic decline in fossil fuel policy and perception is an existential threat to freedom and flourishing around the world. He criticizes the idea that we can simply replace fossil fuels with renewables, pointing out that solar and wind are nowhere near being able to replace the energy that fossil fuels provide today, let alone the far greater amounts of energy humanity needs going forward. He argues that the proposed policies to rapidly eliminate fossil fuel use would, if fully implemented, have truly apocalyptic consequences, making the world an impoverished, dangerous, and miserable place for most people. He believes that even widespread restrictions on fossil fuel that fall short of elimination will shorten and inflict misery on billions of lives, especially in the poorest parts of the world. Epstein's moral case for fossil fuels is based on the idea that more fossil fuel use is something profoundly beneficial that we should fight for, and that eliminating fossil fuel use is something profoundly destructive that we should fight against. He argues that this view contradicts the mainstream narrative, which portrays the elimination of fossil fuels as the consensus of experts. Epstein argues that the designated experts who advocate for the elimination of fossil fuels ignore the unique, massive, and desperately needed benefits of fossil fuels. He points out that they exhibit no concern about the consequences of losing these benefits, including the impact on the billions of people who currently lack cost-effective energy. He criticizes the idea that economic breakthroughs will enable renewables to replace fossil fuels, arguing that this is a baseless claim that ignores the reality of energy economics. Ultimately, Epstein notes that the overall push to eliminate fossil fuels is driven by an anti-human framework. He believes that the goal of eliminating human impact on nature is fundamentally anti-human, because human beings survive and flourish by impacting nature. This anti-human goal is often disguised through vague, seemingly pro-human terms, like going green and protecting the environment. This has been a BrightLearn video from BrightLearn.ai on the book Fossil Future. Why Global Human Flourishing Requires More Oil, Coal, and Natural Gas, Not Less, by Alex Epstein. Visit BrightLearn.ai for more fascinating videos like this one, and visit naturalnews.com for full editorial coverage and breaking news on critical stories that keep you informed and aware of what's really going on.